Hey everyone, it's Patch 3.22 Ancestor, and I want to talk about the current state of Impending Doom and to answer some really frequently asked questions at the end of this video. So if you don't know, Impending Doom is actually currently bugged. This isn't a problem with Impending Doom itself, but it's a problem with Spell Cascade. If we look at the way Spell Cascade is currently casting, as you can see, right in the center of my cursor, the overlaps from the Spell Cascade don't actually reach. As you can see, we only get overlaps at the edges of the circles, meaning that if you're just simply hovering over an enemy like this, you are not actually getting your overlaps and you're not getting your one-tap gameplay. The other problem with this as well is if I am aiming at a target like this, I'm not actually gaining my additional damage and I have to hit it with some of the overlaps on the sides. Now, I do want to say that GGG is well aware of this problem. Tuna has raised this on Twitter, and Nick, who is a current community manager who is replacing Bex, has raised it to GGG, and it is in the current known bugs portion of their thread, so hopefully it'll be fixed soon. Now, I do expect this to actually be fixed within a day or two at most, realistically, simply because it's such a big problem for this build, and GG typically wants people to actually enjoy their league starts, and they typically are on top of things for fixing really bad problems like this, especially for a super popular build. Now, what I want to say is that people are super overreacting. I know some people have been saying, hey, reroll, don't play this build anymore, this build is dead. And I want to say you are super overreacting, and I promise you it is not that bad. Currently, in my chats, I've had quite a lot of people actually kill Searing Exarch and Eater World on a 4-link, and it's been completely fine. Realistically, this build does so much damage that if you nerf it by 2/3, which this is effectively what it is, we're currently losing 66% of our damage, it really doesn't matter. Because the raw base damage of this build is just still so high that 33% of infinity is still infinity, if you get what I'm trying to say here. I know I've seen a lot of people say to play Corrupting Fever or to play Exsanguinate or to just swap to any other ranger build or just even stay Poisonous Concoction. And my opinion on that is just don't do that. If you want to play this build, play it. Don't wait, don't stay with Poisonous Concoction. All the items are now starting to get super cheap because party players are starting to magic find, and it's bringing a lot of unique items into the game. So this is when the unique items typically crash a little bit and become super affordable. And because of that, getting into Impending Doom right now is very easy to do. The other thing to mention as well is, sure, we're not getting the one-tap gameplay, but I don't really think that matters as much as people think it does. This is a poison build at the end of the day. And because of poison build, we are not having super high hit damage. So the whole one-tapping doesn't really apply here as much until you get to the mid and end game budget, to where your one singular poison that you're actually applying does so much damage that you kill something in 1/10 of a second. Realistically, for early game and mid game budgets, you are going to need to at least do 2 to 3 casts. And again, you're doing 5 casts a second. So that's at most holding your button down for half a second to get enough poisons and to wait for the poison damage to actually kick in to kill a mob. So realistically, it's not the end of the world. And personally, from all the mapping I've done, I really don't notice the difference. So I really feel like the build overall is fine. And personally, I've done all pinnacle content at this point, straight up standing there and face tanking it. I currently have about an 8-9 div budget in my character. And not only can I kill every single pinnacle boss in about 10-ish, 15 seconds per phase. And again, this is a poison build, so it has a ramp time. So of course, it's going to take a little bit of time. But I can also literally stand there and face tank every ability. If we want to see some empirical proof on how strong this is me doing Shaper yesterday with about 8 to 9 div. So as you can see, I'm taking the balls that you're supposed to dodge with no problem. And then as you're going to see after this, Shaper's going to come here and I'm just going to stand here and just hold down Impending Doom and just not really care. From half health to dead, it's about 15 seconds or so. And I literally can just ignore everything that the boss actually does. And this goes for basically every single boss. The build is completely fine and you really shouldn't worry about it. Because realistically, while we're not getting the overlaps in the center, we can very easily remedy that by just changing the way we're targeting, at least until the bug is fixed. So let's pretend the bear is the target I want to fight. If I hold my mouse down over it, if I'm name locking on top of the enemy, as you can see, none of the overlaps are actually hitting. Well, what I can simply do is just simply aim a little bit behind the enemy. And as you can see, the overlaps are now starting to hit. And if I have an Awakened Spell Cascade like I do here, if I aim slightly to the left, as you can see, I can get 3 overlaps. It's a little bit awkward when an enemy is super close to you, or slightly to the right, and we can get 3 overlaps here as well. Meaning that we effectively get most of the damage that we are supposed to be getting from our spell cascade, effectively remedying most of it. Now, obviously, if we're doing this in normal spell cascade, we'd only be getting 2 overlaps instead of 3 overlaps. So we're still losing a third of our damage, but that's still a little bit better than just simply aiming normally and only doing a third of the damage that we should be doing. With this, it should be more than enough damage to get you through the next few days until the next patch comes through and fixes this, hopefully. And even if this doesn't get fixed, in my opinion, you don't actually really are going to notice or need the extra damage. That's all I really have to say on the bug. In my opinion, I feel like people are just overreacting and the build is just fine as is. And if people want to reroll, like I said, reroll to Corrupting Fever or reroll to Exsanguinate. But I would really just stay with the build. I plan to stay with it. I plan to throw a few mirrors at it, and I'm still going to have fun with it and not really have the bug impact me at all. Next up, I want to talk about a few questions that people have been having, especially since the max roll guide on this video has been taken down. And I've had a lot of people come into my chat asking me questions about my setup and me having to answer them a billion times. So I'm just going to put them here in this video as a very easy reference for people. So the first thing I want to talk about is why are we using enfeeble in our 6th link and why is temporal chains in our Vixens? Well, the answer to this is the 2 curses that you are using to override each other, as in the top left curse, which in this case is punishment, and the curse in your chest plate, do not have full uptime. So with this setup, my enfeeble has 50% uptime and my punishment has 50% uptime. If I put temporal chains in my chest plate, that means my temporal chain suddenly has 50% uptime. And since temporal chains and despair are 2 damaging curses, we effectively lose around 20 to 30% of our DPS from temporal chains not having full uptime. So we are instead sacrificing the enfeeble, which gives us less damage taken. So we are going to be a tiny little bit weaker and a tiny little bit squishier. But as you saw from a shaper clip, it really doesn't matter. And with this, we will have temp chains and despair have full uptime in our gloves as they will never be overridden. And because of this, it's effectively a 20-30% DPS increase. Now, that said, you would have to recolor your Vixens, and we can quickly talk about how you'd actually do that. It's actually really, really simple to do so. So what we would do is we'd come to the crafting bench and we would just set it to 2 sockets. Then we could use the 1 red, 1 green option, and this will always put the red socket as the left one. Then we can simply go 2 socket, 3 socket for a blue. And if you get a green or a red here, you would just simply set it back to 2 sockets and try again. And then we would do the same thing for 3 to 4. And then you have your perfectly colored Vixens for super, super cheap. I know people have been trying to chromatic these. Don't do that. You're just going to waste your money and you're not going to get the colors where you need it. And it'd be really difficult to actually get the green to not take over the red or have the red where it should be. This just gives you exactly what you need in terms of colors, and it saves you a lot of money. Now, the other thing to mention is how you would go about coloring a lightning coil, because you would need to get a bunch of blue sockets on it. And that's a little bit hard, especially since it's in its strength deck space. Well, we are going to be using tainted chromatic orbs. Tainted chromatic orbs do not care about the attribute requirements on any item you're using it on, meaning it's a raw 1 in 3 chance for any socket to turn into any color. With that said, they're still a little bit expensive, and going for at least 4 blue is a little bit hard. Don't look at my exact setup and be like, I need 5 blue. This is just what my tainted chromatic ended up giving me. And I just rolled with it because there's quite a lot of few different gem options that you can use. So if we want to look at this, there's 3 main blue sockets we actually need. We need Spell Cascade, we need Impending Doom, and we need Enfeeble. The other 3 gem colors can be whatever you want, and there's quite a few options. I would strongly recommend Spellblade as one of them, and we'll talk about Spellblade right after this. So you would need at least a minimum of 4 blue if you're running Spellblade. And then the other 2 sockets, any combination that isn't 2 red works. 2 red is the only 2 combo that does not have any sort of good damaging option. Otherwise, if you aren't using Spellblade, you can just simply use, again, any combo of 3 that doesn't have 2 red in it as well. If we look in Path to Building, we actually have quite a lot of viable options. We have Unbound Ailments, we have Cruelty, we have Void Manipulation, we have Deadly Ailments, and we have Chaos Damage. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to fit in these 3, Enfeeble, Impending Doom, Cascade. And then for your other links, you're just simply picking anything from Unbound Ailments to add a Chaos Damage, and of course, Spellblade as well. Spellblade isn't in Path to Building, so that's why it's not on any of my Path to Buildings, my guides. But I do have Spellblade added onto a Breath of the Council. So why don't we talk about Spellblade next? This is a support that was added into the game, this patch. And what it does is it takes 135% of the damage of your equipped one-handed weapon and gives it to you as raw spell damage. In this case, we're using a Breath of the Council because it has a massive increased physical damage roll on it. As you can see, the flat fizz is 162 to 376, which is all we care about. We want a weapon with high flat fizz. Because poison builds both benefit from added chaos damage and added physical damage. And if we look at Impending Doom, it has a 370% increased effectiveness of added damage, making this very, very strong. Breath of the Council also has increased chaos damage on it, which is great because we don't have any sources of increased damage, making this a really, really strong multiplier to our damage. And lastly, which doesn't count for damage, but makes your build overall feel better, is the increased skill effect ratio of chaos skills, making our withers last longer, meaning we can hit 15 wither stacks more consistently. Because of this, Breath of the Council and a Spellblade actually ends up beating a Apex Rage and any other 6-link in your setup. Now, this is going to not be as true in mid-game as the gap does shorten between Apex and Breath of the Council. But as you can see in my current build, I'm doing 2.2 million DPS with a 6-link and an Apex. If I were to drop the Void Manipulation and drop the Apex for Breath of the Council, now I have put the Spellblade on this Breath of the Council because it's not in Path of Building yet until Path of Building gets updated. But as you can see, we go from 2.2 million damage all the way to 3 million damage. Now, the one thing to mention here is the cast speed. The one thing that will make Apex a little bit competitive is the raw amount of cast speed it gives you, but it's very easy to make up that cast speed by simply either picking up the cast speed on Serpentine Spellslinger or the cast speed on Whispers of Doom, or simply just picking up another gem socket and getting yourself a gem socket and getting yourself a cast speed jewel. But overall, it should be about 20 to 30% more DPS to use Breath of the Council. And the nice thing about this is it's about 1 chaos or so, maybe 2 to 3 chaos for a good roll of it, versus Apex, which is anywhere between 20 to 30 chaos, while overall being a weaker weapon. If you want to simulate a Breath of the Council in your build, I will link my Path of Buildings below. But all you have to do is just simply double click on my Breath of the Council in the item section, click edit, copy and paste the text from this box, and then just simply go to another Path of Building or go to your Path of Building, go to items, and then just control paste. And this will just simply give you my Breath of the Council with the added damage on it. This is a mid-roll-ish Breath of the Council, so it should be a pretty accurate representation of how much damage it'll actually give you. And all you have to do is make sure you actually remove one of your links if you are actually using a 6-link, as obviously you can't have all of this and a Spellblade at the same time. And then you get your accurate DPS. Lastly, what I want to talk about is mana, as it seems like other builds don't really talk about how to fix your mana problems in this build. And I want to very quickly mention it. So when you're starting off, you're going to need to get yourself 2 non-channeling rolls anywhere. You can get this on your amulet. You can get this on both of your rings. It doesn't really matter. You just need 2 of them. You can either come to my global channel, Global 512, and ask there, or you can buy them on TFT for about 2 to 3 chaos for a craft. 2 of these should basically take care of all your mana problems. And if you still have some mana problems afterwards, you can pick up Soul Thief for 2% energy shield and kill. It's not going to help you on bosses, but it'll help for clearing, and it should make it pretty comfortable to play. The next thing you want to immediately do is get yourself a reduced mana cost of skills roll on one of your flasks. You want to rush this ASAP. Make sure when you're getting this roll crafted for you from someone else that you get it on a flask that has a prefix that's helping you get 100% uptime. You can either use increased duration or increased charges gained. And even with a modest roll, even with a medium/low tier roll of it, and a 20% quality on the flask, assuming it's an elemental flask, so assuming it's a topaz, a ruby, or a sapphire, you should be able to get 100% uptime on it really easily. And you want to have 100% uptime on this because if this ever drops, then that means you just don't have the reduced mana cost roll and it feels a little bit awkward. Now, the easiest way to do that, which is what we're doing in our build, I don't think other builds actually have this added in, is we are taking Replenishing Remedies and Careful Conservationist. These 2 alone should give you 100% uptime. Now, I do also have a Spike Concoction Medium Cluster Jewel, but you can hit 100% uptime without this. And I would immediately rush this as soon as you have your 2 non-channeling rings. This should fix your mana problems completely. Later on, you are going to want to be a little bit more mana positive because if you're spamming your Divine Blessing, you are going to have a little bit of bad time as your energy shield won't recharge that much. So what you can do is pick up skittering runes, which we kind of need in this build no matter what, because it's giving us substantially bigger radius, which allows us to overlap a little bit easier on the edges. And it gives us 20% reduced mana cost of skills. Now, this should be really cheap at this point. Silver oil should maybe be 10 to 15 chaos each. So it's not that bad for Anoint, especially when this is best in slot. I would recommend to get yourself a really good amulet before you actually put this on something. And a good option to do this with is a Eternal Struggle. Since Eternal Struggle gives you so many attributes, it lets you either fit in a few more tattoos, or it completely takes care of your attribute problems on lower budgets, while also being a really strong amulet if you get one with Searing Extract being dominant, because then you get 15% coal. With Scattering Runes, with 2 non-channeling rolls, and with the roll on your flask, you should have absolutely 0 problems with mana ever again, until you get yourself an Awakened Spell Cascade. With Awakened Spell Cascade, you're going to have to get yourself a bigger reduced mana cost of skills roll, as you are ever so slowly draining your mana, as the Awakened Spell Cascade just makes you cost substantially more mana. Hopefully that should have answered any of your questions that you had about Impending Doom, at least the super frequently asked ones. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, or feel free to come by my Twitch chat and I'll be happy to answer them for you there. And as always, please do take a look at my mid-game guide. I will link it in the description below. I have built literally a whole wiki on this skill. I have put a lot of effort into notes section. I should be explaining most of the gear choices and why you want to make them, as well as how to actually upgrade your gear, and a little bit of a upgrade path at the bottom of the whole note section, as well as mentioning some mechanics and how they work if you have any questions on them. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video.